Welcome everyone to another episode of Tech Done Different. We are here live at DEF CON. I'm with my special guest, Larry Pesce of Finite State.
Yes, sir.
An absolute expert in many things IoT, including IoT regulation.
Oh man, giving me a big head, anything expert. I don't know if anybody's ever said that about me. I at least know a lot of things.
It's on camera now.
Oh gosh, you said it, not me.
I did. So I'm excited to have you.
Excited to be here.
We've chatted over the years,
Yeah.
and I'm excited to be able to do this with you. So for the benefit of the people watching, introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm Larry Pesce. I'm the director of product security analysis and research and services team lead. It's a lot of words all put together.
You sounded a little confused about that.
I can never remember what my title is and it necessarily doesn't reflect what I do. So we do some pen testing stuff, and I lead those services teams and some code audit stuff. But we also do a lot of research around IoT, firmware, source code analysis, and you name it. I sort of do some of that, and as part of that, if I had said this to myself when I was 21 years old that I was going to be a thought leader, I'd have punched myself in the face. But I do a lot of thought leadership stuff around IoT security, including new federal regulations and how it's affecting software supply chain security and all that type of stuff.
Cool. So let's start there. Let's talk about regulation. I'm not an expert in this area. You are. People ask me about this all the time. Like, it's kind of funny even the way people ask it, because I'm going to reveal some bias in the way I ask this question, but people are like, Congress is going to save us, right? Regulation's going to save us.
Oh, God.
What's the role that regulation's going to play?
Yeah, so the irony is, I've been doing this a long time, that early on in our career and early on in our podcast at Security Weekly, we were anti-regulation, like you can't regulate the security industry, and arguably the new stuff isn't regulating the security industry, it's regulating how device manufacturers have to sell to the industry. Because so many government agencies and so many organizations are tired of getting hacked, getting compromised, and having really poor security embedded devices, to use the larger term. Consumer IoT, ICS, OT, natural gas, pipeline, any automotive, you name it. The push is really to require folks that are selling into various marketplaces to prove that they are taking security seriously through a bunch of initiatives and regulations, requiring a bunch of stuff, and arguably requiring that they are continuing to maintain their products over a period of time. And all of the regulations sort of differ that we're seeing worldwide.
So where are we in the cycle of regulation, and when do we think that the regulation itself will make a meaningful impact?
Great. So here in the US, depending on which sort of vertical we're looking at, in the consumer IoT space, we're really just starting to see some of the new stuff, voluntary program managed by the FCC with Cyber Trust Mark. Cyber Trust Mark is a program you apply to get the label to put on your thing, just like Wi-Fi. When you want to say it's Wi-Fi certified, you have to go through this testing and you get the Wi-Fi label on it. Cyber Trust Mark, very similar. It is a voluntary program.
Okay.
The point of that voluntary program is so that a manufacturer can say, we have a device, we are keeping track of the inventory of the software that goes into it, we are tracking the vulnerabilities that affect that pieces of software, we are providing some risk remediation for that, and we have a cycle in which we can update and that we can monitor and we can update, and we're publishing all of those results and getting an overall security score. And it is continuous. So let's say you go buy a commodity router for your wireless off the shelf at Best Buy. It can have that Cyber Trust Mark, it's got a barcode you scan, and you get the info sheet for that device, and it gives it an overall security rating. And that can change over time, depending on when you buy it or when you scan it, because the industry is dynamic and the exploits are dynamic. So arguably, in my opinion, the US is sort of at the beginning stages with the voluntary program for consumer stuff. When we start talking about automotive, there's a lot more going on into that. The other one, FDA, 524B. All new devices that are intended to go to the marketplace to be used in humans go through testing by the FDA. FDA has very similar types of requirements that Cyber Trust Mark does. You need to submit an SBOM. You need to have an accurate inventory. You need to be able to identify vulnerabilities. You need to have a plan for addressing vulnerabilities. And you need to be able to continue that cycle and prove that you have an infrastructure built for improving that at time of submission to the FDA to get it approved for use in humans.
So if the USA, maybe I misunderstood this, but it sounds like USA is maybe more in the infancy stage in this, but you sounded like some pretty robust.
So FDA is requiring that now.
Okay.
On the consumer side, it's all voluntary. But when you start looking at Europe, EU CRA, sometime next year, 2025, every product that you sell into the European market, connected product you sell into the European market, has to have an SBOM, and you have to prove that you have no vulnerabilities in your product. And you have to have a plan for being able to update that. Like, they have a line in the sand and they say if you want to sell into the European market, you have to submit these items and be approved to sell into the market. And if you don't, you can't sell it here. So that's going to be, and that's, in my opinion, is going to help the US market because it's mandatory in the EU. And if you have an IoT device that you sell in both markets,
right,
you know as well as I do, you make one thing and maybe software changes a little bit to unlock some stuff regulatory-wise, but you have one device and you sell it worldwide.
Yeah, right.
So if you have one device that you're selling into the EU, you have to meet these strict requirements. And now guess what?
So
U.S. market
a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes, exactly. And arguably, from what I see from looking at a whole bunch of the different regulations, that rising tide is coming from the EU.
Cool. So when we think about the fact that you mentioned before, everything's dynamic, the attack techniques, the attackers themselves are dynamic, the tech is dynamic. How is regulation dealing with that, especially when regulation takes quite some time to implement?
And I think in all of the ones that I've been looking at, the regulation is taking some of that into account as part of submitting. They're asking that you have a plan and documented plan and can prove that you are continuing to have an update cycle and that you are continuing to monitor for new emerging threats, and that when new emerging threats arise, that you have a certain time frame in which you're issuing patches. Now, of course, it's often left up to the user to deploy those patches, but the fact that you have a plan and you have that new capability available to address all the new threats, and that it is a continuous sort of life cycle. So they're not addressing it specifically with saying you must apply these patches. They're doing it that you must maintain some sort of finger on the pulse of the industry to know that new things are happening, monitoring that and coming up with appropriate solutions.
Got it. And then as these things are being developed, these are implemented by essentially bureaucrats, politicians, people of that nature who aren't necessarily security professionals. How are we ensuring that the expertise of people like yourself, people like who are at this conference, is injected into these regulatory?
Great question. Many of the bills that we're seeing and all of this type of legislation here in the U.S., we have a great opportunity for those in the community to work with all these folks that are creating these bills, legislation, laws, regulations as part of the public comment period. Also, there's been a lot more outreach because they're starting to realize that, I'm a politician and I don't necessarily know all the technical parts. So they are very much encouraging the community to contribute back. One of the groups that we've been working with, and I've been working with, is a group called Open Policy. And Amit El-Hazari runs Open Policy, and she helps put technology people together with all of the politicians so that before they're even starting to submit, there's already been some good technology review and helping also take these technologists and put them into the public review process. So in my opinion, they're doing a much better job. And Open Policy as lobbyists probably isn't the right word, but lobbyists to help improve what the politicians are actually doing.
Love it.
And from a technology perspective. Yeah, it's amazing.
So we think about probably the hot topic right now everyone's talking about is AI, right? So how are we thinking about something like that, right? We've got these regulations that have taken years to implement. Now here's this new thing that kind of changes everything.
Yeah, overnight.
How do we deal with that?
That one is really tough. And I'm attempting to get involved in some of that community. Now, at Finite State, we do a lot of software bill of materials, and there's this new concept called an AI bomb, artificial intelligent bill of materials, intended to be able to have one, hey, there's AI in this product. We're telling you that we're using AI as part of this product, but also how that AI is constructed, what types of versions they're using, what type of models, but it's very much in the infancy. Just like AI is still in its infancy and has taken off like crazy, there's definitely a group of folks that are looking to move AI bombs down the road a little bit and make it much more applicable to some of the security stuff, myself included. Like, I'd love to see AI bombs talk about describing the model, which model you're using, and if those models have any known vulnerabilities from, say, the top 20 AI vulnerability models and so forth. I'd also like to see stuff like which training data was used, and is that training data biased in a specific fashion, so that you know when you're potentially using this product that the answers you get and the way it gives you output may be biased to specific types of things. No, it's not there yet.
Yeah, right.
It's not there yet.
Right, it's a work in progress.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've got a lot of work to do, and we need a lot of work to do fast.
What do you think is the top priority of that work to be done?
I think some of the big ones are around ethics, and I think, honestly, also disclosing that AI is being used in products. I see pictures all over the place that have been AI generated. There was a recent attack that we covered on our show about someone from China that had applied for North Korea. Someone from North Korea that had applied for a job used AI generated imagery, AI generated video as part of the onboarding and the interview process, AI generated audio, got a job, and on day one started installing malware on their work computer to do infiltration. Like,
that's remarkable.
Ethical use of AI, putting some guardrails on some of that type of stuff, and so better detection of AI in use, I think, would probably be a good one.
Interesting. The guardrail part that you brought up, that's really fascinating to me. The idea that the narrative right now is that these systems are secure because we put these guardrails in place. But there's tons of research, including a lot of research in this very room we're in right now, that shows how you can actually get the models to bypass their own guidelines.
Absolutely, absolutely.
How do we deal with that? And can regulation actually deal with that?
That's a great question. I think regulation is probably having a really hard time with some of like this stuff. Like, this is even so new for the regulators that they're having their hard time wrapping their heads around it. As am I, because it is evolving so fast that I get overwhelmed by some of the stuff. I think really some of that comes down to some of the other things we talk about in all sorts of other industries, like secure by design. That the folks that are spooling up these new AI types of technologies and applications of AI really need to take the time and slow down. I know everybody wants to put AI in the title because if it didn't have AI at RSA this year, it didn't sell type of thing.
Right.
Everybody wants to put AI in the title because it's AI powered, because it's a new big thing. But I think if we really want AI to succeed and be something that really helps society, we need to slow down, step back a little bit, and put better guardrails with secure by design. So design it securely from the beginning.
Yes.
So, we don't have to go put those guardrails on the side of the highway afterwards that they were already built in as part of berms when we built the highway.
Sure. Is the horse out of the barn on that? Can we slow down?
I think the horse is out of the barn a little bit. Can we go corral those horses from the wilderness? I certainly hope so. I think we are very much doing the same thing that we've done in industry over and over again. We've got something to market really fast, and we're going to go try to secure it later. We're going to add it on later. So the horse is probably out of the barn. But
I felt this way about every emerging tech. Like, you can look at IoT.
Get it to market.
Get it to market. It's like, I almost think of these different phases. Like, phase one is innovation. Someone comes up with something, and then the next phase immediately after it is this like period of idiocy. Where it's like, let's take this thing we barely proved out, and let's roll it out without any consideration for security, and then the third phase is improvement, and that's like a long tail. That's kind of what's happening right now.
And I think back to sort of the beginning part of the conversation, I think that is where some of the governmental regulation is starting to help that, that long tail of going back and adding that. And we're still seeing new IoT type products and new AI type products that adding that in now, eventually some of that bad stuff is going to fall off the tail end. We're not going to support it. We're not going to be using it anymore. Maybe a really long tail, but some of the new stuff is going to be better managed. We're going to have more of that security by design because it's going to be required if you want to enter the marketplace, if you want to sell something, you've got to do this up front.
Yeah.
And I think that's really going to be valuable.
I think our sign was telling us that our show needs to be over.
Uh-oh.
But here's the thing about tech. Like, if it wouldn't be a tech event if some of the tech didn't fail.
Right, and it is a HackerCon, right? So somebody probably owned it remotely.
Someone does not like that, yeah. So as they
were, in fact, thinking like a hacker and turned it off.
Yeah, they're like, well, this is what I would do. In fact, I would turn this off. We just roll with it, though. I mean,
Absolutely.
I was on a panel earlier, and literally all the audio went out. So what do? You just
keep going.
You roll
you project.
with it. We walked out into the crowd, and then we chatted.
Awesome.
So as our time here comes to a close, what do you want to leave our audience with? Is there like what's coming next, something you're excited about, inspirational message? Like how do you want to wrap us up here?
So I'm excited to do more sort of research in the IoT industry, get a better pulse of where some of the things stand now, so that in the future when some of these regulations are starting to come into effect and that we can hopefully see that there is some improvement into the overall security to our connected devices, and that maybe they're actually making some inroads and that they're making some difference, so that we can maybe ask for more of it. I never thought I'd say asking for more government regulation for anything technology related, but it kind of feels like it's going to take that to get the manufacturers to slow down, to do it secure by design, to really make some changes. And by requiring folks to have this built into the product, like you can't just go and take this thing and bolt on security later, like you've got to do it now. I really think this is going to start improving things. So
love it.
I can only hope.
Yeah.
I can only hope.
That's a great note to end on. So Larry, amazing.
Thank you, sir.
Fun chatting with you as always.
Absolutely.
Larry Pesce from Finite State. If you want to learn more, just go to tedharrington.com/podcast, and we'll catch you next time.